Well, hello, this is your host Eric. For the GMODISM Empire, we're back with another tutorial. This time, we are going to continue working on our test subject, the beautiful hoplite hull from Commander Ali. We are going to have a little practical guide on ship propulsion. A lot of you like to build ships that look reasonably realistic, and what are the options for, well, propelling them? We're going to go through some different good options, and I'm also going to tell you that this is kind of a follow-up on the previous tutorial, which is called a practical guide to ship hull armor. So that is why we already have armor in this thing. That's from the previous tutorial, and if you want to know how to do that, please check that out. For this tutorial, you basically need a ship hull that kinda floats at the level you want it at, because we are going to rely on its own flotation mainly. And I mean mainly, there are some other things we will go through later, but anyways. The most obvious way to propel ships is, of course, to go to the water section and use regular propellers like this. To use them, you, of course, need also engine power. So, before we do anything else fancy, you probably want to know about something that people tend to stop you from using, and that's RTGs. RTGs is a fantastic way to generate free power. What you basically do when you have RTGs is that they magically generate electricity, and then you can have a battery, and then you can have a piece of electric engine on that battery. And suddenly, you have made yourselves a free energy system. This thing can now give you engine power for absolute free without you really doing anything, and that is really good for some parts, some situations. Generally, people recommend you from not using RTGs or electric engine because they are very, very, very expensive. RTGs cost 5,000 per piece, and battery is not cheap either. They're also very EMP susceptible, so if you decide to go this route, you really want to put them on rubber. But they have the cool thing that they provide free power. What you can have, if you have a larger ship, you know, that should be self-sufficient, you may want to have a little bit of an RTG system and an electric engine on it, so that it can go home by itself. So, for example, if you run out of materials, it can be handy that the ship is able to propel itself still. Even though it's low or have no material, it can still kind of go, which can be very valuable. Also, if you're building drones, miners, service vehicles, and things that really, or just surveillance boats or whatever, it can be a good idea to have an RTG electric propulsion on them so that they will never need any materials. This is especially true if you have an unarmed vehicle that doesn't bring any weapons, because the weapons, of course, require like materials usually, and then it can be a cool idea to just make them not require materials at all. So you kind of have them, you pay for them, and then they just run. It's very neat. There are weapons you can use on engine like power or RTG only. You can actually use lasers and pack particle cannons with using a propulsion system like this, but the amount of firepower you will get from a RTG electric system like this, it's so small that it's gonna cost, like at that point, it's just much better to have a extra inefficient engine on there to generate power fast and rely on the RTG when you don't have any. So That's not really a recommendation, I'm just telling you. RTG electric is mainly for when you want to have a like drone or service vehicle, or you want to have a backup system for your ship so you can at least get home. Anyways, if you look at this thing, just going through the basics here, it's good to know that you can see on the electric engine, 1 unit of energy creates 1 unit of power for 1 second. So when you look at the RTGs, you can see each one of these produce 400 energy per second. And this one converts 1 energy per second. So this is 4 times 3 basically, so 1200 basically. And then this has a capacity of 2430. So this engine is actually over dimensioned. We need more RTGs to be able to power this engine. So this will trick you a bit. If you put it like this, you can see this has 800. So here we can see 400, 400. This has 800. This will roughly be able to power this electric engine. So now we have a balanced system. You can see this power generated is max 800 and 810, and these produce 405 each. So this is a really balanced setup. This is basically what you want. Do keep in mind, however, that if you accidentally run like the engine too hard so that you use up more energy than is stored in the battery, if you have a too large like engine basically, if you have it like this, the engine will decrease in its charge, and just like a real electric engine, it will eventually be super weak. So what I generally recommend is what you can have like a slight overproduction of energy for your engine, so you won't run out of this issue. So I just added 30 energy per second extra, and now we have a pretty smart setup. Now, this is really expensive. Remember, this is already like 10,000. It's, you know, you don't really want to use this on a combat system really, because it's expensive to have these on board. But as said, it can be a good backup, so you at least can get your good girls home for repair. And that, I feel, we should basically just showcase this. So what if we put some propellers on this, just so we can show us what this looks like. So if we go forward like this, we can leave them at automatic control. They will basically decide which to use when, for what maneuvers we do. And just to keep things simple, we just add a couple of rudders here. This is like the most basic propulsion. This is for you beginners. Don't worry, we will be going through advanced things later, if you are a little bit more well-versed in the game. But anyways, you can see here, we are controlling the vehicle here, and I'm now holding forwards. So we're going forwards at 13 meters per second, not very fast. And now I started to turn. You can see we have a functional ship. It's just pretty slow. But yeah, it works. So here you have this type of setup. It's very basic. And if you want to build a like traditional easy ship to this is by far the easiest way to design ships. You probably want to have engines on it other than this. Say that this is a backup. You can just go to fuel engines, will be the most easy, and you can plonk down one of these prefabs here. They can be out under the water, it's absolutely fine, and the exhaustless versions are just very handy. You can put them everywhere. Just add enough fuel tanks. They will tell you how much fuel you estimate to require and how much fuel per minute you basically have. Now, this is a really strong engine. We are pretty over-dimensioned. We should, however, throw in some of that. And you may also wonder, how much engine power do we need? Well, I'm glad you asked. Each of these propellers takes 405 engine power. So when we have 2 of them and having them at full speed, we're basically using everything this engine is producing. So that is very neat. This engine, like this is 405 exactly, and this one takes 405 exactly. So it's a really neat setup. We don't actually need this fuel engine here. I just spawned it for showing it. I won't be going through how to make engines in detail in this, except steam engines for propelling ships, which we're going to look at later in the tutorial. It's a little bit more advanced. But general power generating engines is something we can cover in the future. For now, I would just say, if you don't know how to make engines, look at my other tutorials about that, or use the prefabs, and you can have some engine power in your ships. Anyways, as you might imagine, the amount of speed we can get from our free system is very slow. We can get like almost 15 meters per second when we are having this RTG electric setup and these propellers, and we only go, you know, 15 meters per second, which is pretty slow for a from the depth ship. So that is basically everything. We will look at these regular propellers like this. It's not brain science. I think most of you watching this tutorial probably already knew this, but maybe you didn't know about the perfect RTG balance act that we just did. Anyways, one thing more I should cover. If you have trouble paying for the energy here or the power use, go into this and then go to propulsion. You can see 4 times output, 6 times power use. Put that at something lower. Now we have 2 times output, 2 times 33 power use. If we put that as 1, we have 1x output, 1x power use. So this will now be much more efficient. Having 6 of these is more efficient than having 1 of these running at, or no, I mean 4 of these. Having 4 of these is more efficient than having 1 of these set to like boosted 4x. If you set this to 1 and just have 4 instead, you have more cost-effective propulsion. I hope you got that. Anyways, we are going to continue here. I'm gonna take one of my prefabs for a RTG electric that gives 405 power, because I want that as a backup system asset. And I'm going to install it inside of here on some rubber. And we use it on rubber because rubber is insulating from ENP pretty well, while still providing, well, not making it fall off, which is a nice little boost. Anyways, inside of this little compartment here, I have decided we are going to have some delicate components. We're going to continue with the rubber here, because I'm gonna put something that you may not think of you actually need, but when you don't have it, it's so annoying. Yeah, it's really annoying to not have stabilization. We're going to work on stabilization. Before we show or work on any other type of propulsion method, we need to first fix the stabilization issues. Having a ship that rocks back and forth like this, maybe you like that. I don't. I want my ships to sit stable in the water. I want to sit them straight in the water. I don't want them to roll and jump around. I don't want them to pitch and jump around. And I want them to not flip when the weather is super bad. So to do that, we need active stabilization. We should have active stabilization. Most ships use active stabilization, unless they are big cardboard things that are just really big wooden slabs. You've seen them on the channel before. And how do we do that? There is a block here that's called PID general purpose. And this is the time for using the PID general purpose. You may also want your ship to be able to fine-tune the altitude using a general PID. And if you'd want that, you should have 3 of these. I'm gonna add 3 in case I want to change the altitude later on. The purpose of using the general PIDs is because when you take manual control over the ship, you will override the PIDs that are already present in the AI. If we plonk down an AI here, we have the PID tab, and that's jolly good. Thing is, when you are taking control of the ship, that is not gonna apply anymore. And you will then run your ship unstabilized, and that's super annoying. And that's probably why, if you have suffered when controlling your ships, it's probably because you don't have active stabilization on PIDs, general PIDs. So the general PIDs basically overrides your input. So this is of course very useless if you for some reason have a ship that you want to dive into the ocean and want to be able to control pitch yourself. Then you can't really have these on all the time. But if you build a normal ship that's gonna be stable always, then you should have general PIDs definitely. So let's get going here. We have something called propulsion pitch. Check that box. And inside the input list here, you will need to find pitch. And inside the gain here, if you turn up the gain, it will be a little bit more hardcore. And if you turn down the gain, it will be a little bit more smooth. Now this depends largely on the ship you are using, but for now I'm going to leave them as is because a lot of the times the preset works fine. You go to the next one, you click roll, you select roll from the list here, so it's roll to roll, very nice. And then you have for finally the altitude, you'll have altitude above waves or above mean sea level. For this, we generally want to use altitude above mean sea level. Unless you have a tiny boat, then you may need to use altitude above waves. So if you want to be stable when riding on top of the waves, you could probably have, that would be a little bit more stable for you in that circumstance. But generally, I'm not building so many small ships, so build altitude above mean sea level is what we want. And then you have the output propulsion vertical, or possibly air pump fraction control could you also use for this. But if we have active altitude control, we will set the propulsion vertical, and if we are using air pumps to control our altitude in the water, we will use the air pumps also, or well, you can select both of them, thankfully. Well, to control the actual altitude, you will have a set point down here. We're going to check that out a little bit later, so I'm going to turn this off for now, and I'm going to color it pink so that I remember that this is the altitude control if we basically want that. Now, to be able to automatically control our pitch and roll, we of course need pitchers and rollers. So the neatest way to do that is to right-click this mirror mode, and it's actually better to place down the pitchers and rollers when your ship is already built, like finished, because then you know exactly where the center of mass will be. So if you haven't really completed your ship, like me here, you'll just have to wing it. And in From the Depth, like in real physics, things depend a little bit on pivoting points. It's like basic physics. The further away you are from the center of mass, the less force you need to apply in order for it to be effective. So a roller placed, like a roller is actually just going to be a water propeller, but a roller placed here will be pretty ineffective, while a roller placed here will be a lot more effective. So what we're going to do is we're going to place them as far out to the side we can get away with. without it looking shit, or I don't know. If you put them out here, they will also be more easily targeted, so you may also want to put them further in. It's a little bit up to you where you want to have them. But I'm going to have a couple of rollers here, and I'm going to have a couple of pitchers in the very front, because in my experience, the front of the ship actually pretty rarely gets too much shooting at. But we want some redundancy, so at least 2 of them there. And then I also want a couple of rollers. And for me, I think the rollers... no, I mean pitchers in the back, not rollers. Pitchers in the back. I think we should have a couple of pitchers back here. And now what you do... there are 2 ways of doing this, by the way. You can have the huge propellers like this. And then on top of that, you can go to the air section and you can set the metal duct on top of it to keep it protected. But personally, like they don't get shot at that much actually, so it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do like this. I'm going to have my rollers straight on like this, and if a torpedo comes just from below, I guess we are pretty game over. What can we do? It's probably not going to be an issue. Famous last words, but I'm gonna place a few more rollers because, of course, the distance to the middle is a lot shorter than the distance from the middle, that is the center of mass, to the front and back of the ships. So our rollers need some extra juice, whereas our pitchers don't really need that much juice. To make it look a-okay, we are still going to use the ducts, because I'm sure you also want to make something that looks okay. You don't have to be ashamed. So what you basically do is you take this metal duct and you have it in the right color, the color you want it at, and then you just Ctrl-Shift-X. So you hold Control, you hold Shift, and you click X as in Xerxes, and then you basically place it down like that, and you have a pretty smooth looking cover for it. Not 100% perfect, I can agree on that, but it's good enough for me. And if it's good enough for you, you are welcome. This is of course not going to add any armor to them or help them any way whatsoever, but it is going to remove the visual eyesore that you may have also experienced. You can see this is glowing, glowing sadly. That's because it has nothing that is holding it up, so I'm placing a block there. These ones may look like they're sitting at nothing, but fortunately they attach to the sides as well, so they are absolutely fine. Now, you could technically leave it as at this. It's trying to be stable-ish, you know. It's doing a better job than before. We need to tune them and stuff. But one thing that I think is really annoying, if you check here, pitch up, yes, up, down, okay, roll right, what? And here is like pitch up. They have some tiny command to activate on pitch up. In my opinion, or in my experience rather, using the automatic control is usually something you want to avoid. This is going to make it use a lot more engine power than it has to. So my recommendation is turn off automatic control for all propulsion and save your vehicle before you do that, because it may be annoying. And then you go in here and or you can set manual control for each of them. And what the cool thing is that you can just click the pitcher preset. If the pitcher preset would turn red, it means it's the wrong way. It needs to be green, then it's set up in a reasonable way. Now, this is set as pitcher preset. That's wrong. You want to click roller preset, roller preset, roller preset. And what you also can do, you can go in build mode and you can click Ctrl-C, that's copy, and then you can paste it. And if you paste it to the other side, they will be reversed. So then you need to do like this, click this roller preset, then you just copy, paste, paste, paste on these ones. And now you can check them all and see if you set up all of them or not. They should be roller presets and not picture presets. Rollers, thank you. Then in the back here, they are probably already set up as pictures. I don't know. By default, the game handles to set up stuff as like pictures, but not rollers. I don't know. It's just how it works. So if we go to the make sure we're controlling the vehicle, we can now hold our buttons and see if we are indeed rolling. And you can see, yes, we are rolling. And let's see if we can pitch. And we can pitch back and forth. So that test says that we have basically set it up completely. And now you should see that these are being a little bit more powerful. If your pitching and rolling system is a little bit too weak, well, in this case, it's probably because we have far too little engine power to even uphold this. But it can also be that you need to increase the gain a little bit to make these a little bit more aggressive. And then they will more aggressively control the pitch and roll of the vehicle, making it like firmer, sit firmer. Issue is if you drag up the gain on these to like max, your vehicle is not going to be stable anymore. It's going to rock back and forth and be like rocking around like this, probably pretty aggressive motion. You can see it's already ran out of engine power. So the smoother you have them, the less engine power they will use generally. I'm gonna start to set them at about 0.1-ish, and that will be that. We're not going to control altitude as of yet. We might do that a little bit later, but we at least have the electronics installed to do that. And remember, these components are EMP susceptible. They can only touch rubber or air. Otherwise, EMP can leak into this and basically destroy them, and they will be very sad. Well, I didn't mean to talk that much about stabilization, but I just have to say one more thing. And that is, if you have a ship that's very square or something like this, you can of course have both picture and roller preset. What you do is you click the roller preset, so you see where this is. Then you click the picture preset, and then you just drag the roller, so it's both a picture and a roller. So that can be a smart way to have as a backup thing as well. And yeah. Having the smaller propellers are of course also a good option. You can compare their max force here from the smaller propeller to the larger propeller, and you probably understand why I go with the larger one. It's, yeah. 9 small boat propellers gives the same boost as, like, the same propulsion as one big. So they have the same power density actually, but you can see that this basically requires 405 and this requires 45. So yeah. Wait, that's actually the same. I'm sorry, I always thought the larger ones were more effective. Go ahead and spam smaller ones if you want to, especially if you're making a smaller ship. It's much easier to hide them in the hull. Use the one that's square. You can basically just remove a block and just fill them in like that. Yeah. Well, you learn it, and if you learn something new every day, I guess. I just assume the larger ones were more effective, but they are not. In this current version of the game, I should say. When you're watching tutorials, always check the number yourself, because the game updates come out and they change things sometimes. Obviously, we need to have some backup power, and I'm gonna use one of my prefabs here and just put in a tiny little fuel engine here, which is very compact but very powerful. A general suggestion is that you don't have all of your engine power stored in one place. You want to have multiple smaller modules at different spaces. Injector engines are pretty inefficient, so we are going to set the priority of this one to a bit lower, -1. It's actually 2 engines in one, so yeah, it's already set to -1. Beautiful. When you're making ships, it's smart to have important things under the water because they get blown up less often. And it's also very smart to have the exhaust go back right into the ocean. I wonder why there are no fish, as said. And the easiest way to do this is to basically go back to the air tab, and you can go to the metal duct. And by this, you can have a sleek little exhaust area. So exhausts will go out this way and it will still look neat. Like that. If you have exhaust and stuff going up above the water and engines above the water, they will be very hot when they are running, and that will make it easier for heat-seeking missiles and heat-targeting AIs to shoot out your engine. And if they are underwater, they are pretty much safe. At least from heat-seeking missiles. I don't know how smart heat-seeking AI are, but IR cameras doesn't work underwater, so I suppose they are invisible. You also want to have your fuel tanks underwater because when they get destroyed, they will start burning. So if we go here and select this little debug thing, and you can see no fire was created. But if this was over the water, it will now create a fire. You can see? When they get destroyed, they will create fires, but if they are under the water, no fire will be created. Alright, so let's just check out some extra tips before we go into the deep parts or more complex parts, which I actually want to show you about because it's like hard. If you have a surface ship like this and you want to make it go a little bit faster or have a little bit faster maneuverability, jet engines are still pretty good. And if they are going to be over the water, go ahead and use them. There is no wrong with using jet engines. Like Borderwise uses some jet engines to both propel and steer the Drakenslang Mark III, and it's a good use of jet engines. Like you can have a couple of jet engines here, and you just make sure they are Turner presets like this. Now, and then when you go, you can see we are suddenly going 24 meters per second, very handy. And you can see that we are now turning only with jet engines because I removed the rudders we have had before. So if you want to give your ship a little bit of an extra boost, making it go faster, add jet engines over water and it will go faster magically. However, ion thrusters, they work underwater and over water, but they give pretty bad thrust for like their cost and engine power. So at that point, it's actually better to have jet engines above water and then have propellers underwater than to have only ion thrusters. Ion thrusters are a very specific use case, but they are less efficient than having both a regular jet engine and a water propeller. Yeah. You'll get very little thrust out of ion thrusters, so know what you're doing when you're using them. Don't slap them on ships, it's pretty pointless. Alright, so the hands down best way to maneuver and propel your ship, that's azipods. And if you don't know what an azipod is, it's a thing like this. It goes under the water, it turns, and it has propellers on it. It's azipod for azimuth pod or azimuth propeller pod, azimuth propeller pod, something like that. Anyways, it's a thing that it's basically propellers on a stick that goes underwater. This was the one I built for the when I did the Martin Sitopant's Yamato refit thing. And just having one of these, you can see here, it probably eats up all our engine power, but you can see it makes us go really fast and makes us go really maneuverable as well. Of course, this particular azipod is absolutely over-dimensioned for this ship, but I'm going to show you how to build an azipod. There are basically different ways you can do an azipod, and like I mean, by all means, put ion thrusters on yours, do what you want. But you go into the spin block here, and then you click G in the direction you are facing, and then it will be aligned properly. So then you place down where your Azipod is going to be. And now you basically have the spin block where it's going to be mounted on. And to propel your vehicle, you can either go into the water and just use the huge propellers like this. You can see this one is now set to manual control, and it's set to back, and this one is set to forward. So it's set up automatically to the correct values when I set the automatic control off, basically, before. But if you didn't do that, set this one to forward and this one to backwards. They will provide equal thrust, so it's good to have one on each side. And on this little thing, you have a spin block, and inside the spin block, you have angle control. So you want this to be set to yaw, but you don't want to set it to like 1 or -1. You want to set it to 0.2, for example. And if we set it to positive 0.2, you can see when we are clicking K, we're actually going the wrong direction. Okay, I set it up wrongly. So set it up to something, see if you were wrong or not, I guess. And if you are steering reverse now, just put a negative in front of it. And now, when it's -20, it will go nicely jawing to the right when I hold the K button, and it will jaw nicely to the left when I hold the H button. And if you want to make it jaw more aggressively, you go in here in the angle control, test it to 0.4, for example, and you can see it goes in a pretty steep angle like this. And the steeper your Azipods will jaw, the slower you will go down in speed. So you basically trade speed for maneuverability here. So you need to set it to a value you think is reasonable for what you're building. Is it more important that you turn fast, or is it more important that you don't lose speed? You may want to set it to something pretty low, like 0.1 instead. It will still give you a lot of angle to actually turn. You can see we're still turning pretty well, but we're not slowing down too much with this. Beautiful. If you feel the water propellers are just a little bit too weak, there is a stronger propeller you can use. You go to steam engine, and then there is something called medium crank, small crank, and large crank motor. And if you want more power, you basically want to go with the large crank motor. And on this crank motor, you can then fit a larger propeller, like this, for example. And it's apparently not attached because we need to have a large shaft as well. Okay, and the shaft needs to be pointing the right direction. They're always finicky. All right, and now we have a large shaft to a large propeller, and it's going very nicely. However, you can't just put another one on top of there. If you want it in the other direction, you need to put down another crank motor in the other direction and another large shaft to do like this. Then this is set to backwards and this is set to forwards. And now you can see that you have a lot of thrust at your command. Very beautiful. Be careful with your engine power though. As you probably noticed, our engine power is 0 right now. The crank motors, the large one, does take a lot. You can go in here, you can see maximum power use 4,000. So both of these, so they take 8,000. They basically take more than the engine power we have. So yeah, a little bit over-dimensioned for our current engine capabilities, but as you can see, they also provide a pretty good thrust, a pretty good maneuverability, since they are on a little azipod thing, so that we can control azimuths with them. If you want more modern looking protected azipods, you can also put them inside of these ducts that are on the air menu, and they will protect the propeller and they will not make them output less force. That's only for the air stuff. For the propeller stuff, they are very, very nice. They play nice. For this ship, I'm going to design a medium shaft. So this is from the medium crank, and it uses the medium 3-meter propellers. So each of these azipods thus use a maximum of 2000 power, which is a bit, but you know, we are gaining a pretty nice speed at a reasonable engine cost. Right, and if we would further want to boost the steering capability on this, we can actually go to the water tab and go to not the rudder pivots, but the rudder sections. You can slap onto these a piece of rudder, which is pretty wild. And now you have a custom rudder that can help your azipods steer and make your ship a little bit more stable in the water as well. Oh, and about those rudders, you can of course use them as is as well. We can probably have that too. What you basically do is you either use whatever pivot you like, and then you slap them down like this, and then you basically build together the type of rudder shape you want. It doesn't really matter what direction things are in. And you just go here and see its jaw left. See if this is correct. It is. It will now take the water drag and direct your ship with it a little bit. It's good, as said, to have different ways of both steering the ship, propelling the ship, having engine power, because then you're so much more redundant. And a general tip from someone who's held quite some tournaments in my time playing this game: redundancy always wins. And as with the azipods, the more acute the rudders turn, the more they will slow you down. So if you want them to slow you down less, you basically just decrease the amount of force they can use, or like set the jaw left to 0.5 instead of 1, as is the default. Now it can be a smart idea to save down your azipod if you're happy with the design. So I decided to write down the power requirement when I make azipods, because otherwise it's hard to use them on future builds if you don't know how much power they basically need. So here we have the design I came up with. It's basically slapped on some decos. One thing that's really smart to have, that's a couple of azipods in the front of the vehicle. This is what makes you a lot more maneuverable. The only thing you really need to use them is to go inside of the angle control and remove this little minus sign on the spin block, which I neatly hidden away with a deco. And now you can clearly see, if we're controlling this, they are now mirrored like that. So that gives us a lot better maneuverability, having some rudders and stuff in front. We can preferably make the ones in the front a little bit weaker if it is slowing down our speed a little bit too much. You will have to test that yourself, what type of maneuverability and speed balance you would prefer. Now it is time to take a little look on this altitude setting. Our ship is sitting perfectly at the level we want to make it sit at, but of course we are not heavily loaded with weapons and stuff. So, if you would want to have active propulsion to make it stay afloat, that's called up props, you basically add a bunch of propellers in the close center of mass, and you will set them to pusher preset, which happens to be upwards. So then you can paste this setting here onto the other ones. On your existing propulsion, you can basically add propulsion upwards as well, so that they are not only roller but also up props. This is of course optional. However, having up props will needlessly take engine power, and that's an inefficient way of doing it. I recommend up props if you're building really big ships, because using the water pumps is actually a bit laggy. But for this size of ship, it's absolutely fine. It's when it comes to the really large ships that the water pump is pretty laggy. So this is one closed space from the water. So we can add a water pump anywhere here really. And now the volume is very high. We should now go to this thing. And we can here go and set air pump fraction control. Now, if we check the air pump, we can see that it's only 9% filled, and it will try to keep the ship at a reasonable flotation level thanks to this setting. If we want it to float a little bit higher in the water, we can do a set point change. So if we add 5 in here, for example, we put in number 5 here, so we should aim for this altitude. We can check the water pump fraction, and now it went up to 25%, 27%. And if we want to make it float even higher, now we can't be this high, but set it to 15, and you will see that the air pump is now basically, yeah, it's set to 75%, trying to keep us a little bit higher in the water, as you can see now. So it depends a little bit for your ship what the number should be, but start at 0 and see how that works out. And if you're too low, you can set it higher, and if you sit too high in the water, you can set it lower. All right, to the fun stuff. Commander Ali has graciously installed spaces where we can install steam propellers. Steam propellers can give you really powerful propulsion in a smaller ship. And you don't need to have a hole where the propeller goes. You can have a full block. I'm going to turn on symmetry plane mode so that we can build 2 mirrored systems. We are basically going to go down to the steam section and go to the large propeller, and this is prepared for the 7 meter, the really big one here. To attach this propeller, we need to use the large shafts, and there is something called the large sealed shaft. The large seal shaft can go through one block like this. So on this, we can basically put a 7 meter propeller like this, and it's now connected to this little sealed shaft. We are going to put a couple of... we need, of course, a large transmission. The transmission is really useful because it can... you can see here, the transmission is actually built into the crank motors. You can see they have an RPM factor of 2. But you basically need a transmission to set the gear ratio to 2 when you're building like this. So we are going to figure out exactly where we can fit this. I think we'll need to move around some armor blocks. And there are large shaft bearings. They are a little bit more armored if you need extra health. Then we have the large transmission, and it can fit here. So there we can see the propeller is set there. Make sure it's set to pusher preset. Just like that. And the input to this will of course be a large gearbox with some pistons. If you need to offset the axes, you do have the option of using these guys, the large axis shifting gears. That can be pretty handy. And in the large gearbox you find all the parts. So the large cased crank is pretty clunky and big. You can see either we can kind of move a lot of armor, or we need to use an axis shifting gears. So I'm gonna plonk this down here, and we're going to go back for an axis shifting gear. And I may need to remove that to even see what I'm doing. This is some large components, I'll tell you. Okay, so there we have that one. And we need to use that one, and it needs to go like this, right? Not quite. The other one. All right. And there we have the right one. And you may have issues connecting pieces together. And if you have issues connecting pieces together, it's usually because you accidentally reversed some of the components, because the direction of the suction cups matter. And on this, we can put a large gearbox like this. And when they light up blue like this, it means they have been connected together. Right. Now we only have one large cased crank, and I would think we should have 3 of them. It depends how you want to build your system, but I just added a large gearbox to basically see where we have our, if we had a connection. All right, so we do have the parallel and serial piston. The integrated piping in these basically connect into each other, but the parallel one works as a single stage, and the serial one works as different stages. So the one that comes in series is a lot more energy efficient, since it will reuse the steam. Having 2 stages is a lot better than 1 stage for energy efficiency, but having 3 stages is better, and 4 stages is even better, and more than that you're starting to quickly get to diminishing returns. All right. So, if you just want to test this system out a little bit, we can basically slap on a small boiler to the side here with some piping. I'm sorry. Let's see here. This is the input, right? It is. And have it like this. A little bit of piping there. Oh, it was just probably that I didn't have any more materials. But this is, of course, very small boilers, but we just spawned them in here to basically test and see if our engines would be working. You can see they are turning here. And the large crank, we're going to put this to 2. So that we have some higher top speeds. If you don't use that, you don't have as high top speeds. Beautiful. And if we start going forwards, you can see that, wow, they are starting to turn. So now we need to build a boiler that is properly dimensioned to this engine. But there is one important setting we need to set. These also now generate power, and it can be nice to make them generate some power, but having them generate power will limit their maximum RPM. Even if you set it to generate a little power, the RPM will be a little limited. So you can set up them to generate 1000 power each for backup. But if you want to maximize your speed, if you want to make sure that these engines only output speed and not generate power, you need to set the maximum power creation in here to 0 for both of these. These are now actually separate engines, and that's good because that adds redundancy, especially if we have some armor between them. Anyways, for the same reason, which is redundancy, I would also highly recommend you to have the boilers for these separate as well. But even more important than that, is that the boilers are underwater, because otherwise they will start a fire when any of them are destroyed. To fix this issue, I'm going to, because of course we have some cramped space, we're going to have one of the boilers on this side. So I basically switch the direction on these. So here we have the input for them, and here we have the input for them. You can use medium, small, or large. They are not as strict as the gearboxes. The gearboxes basically only work within their same size, but the boilers basically work for any size. So if you use a boiler here, add a medium boiler on top of that, you can see this will start to output power. Now, this is over water, so we need to find a way with some piping to put it under the water, of course. But if you can manage to fit the entire engine underwater, like flipping this in some direction, for example, that is a better method than using piping if you don't have to. And there we have it. I have set up the steam engines here, and as we have a serial piston system, they will be more efficient than if we have a parallel piston system. But a parallel power system can give you more power output, or will give you more power output because it's literally a single stage. But in any case, if you're looking at this here, you can see we have set these gear ratio to 2. And even if we set it to 2, let's see here, our RPM seems to be maxed out. Question is the steam engines we have large enough? This one with 2 modules seem to be struggling a little bit. It doesn't really put quite enough. This one with 3 modules does definitely output more than we need. You can see this when you look at the steam engine. When you're at max force, you can see the material per second is, it's actually 13.9 of 15. So 2 medium boilers is enough for this engine. Like, if you have it at full juice and it's not using more than what you output, you can see here, this has the capacity to produce 22, but we're only producing 13. So what we basically can do here is we can remove a module and have only 2, because that is enough when we get up to pressure here. And they are also underwater, which is perfect for not creating fires. Now, there is one extra little cool thing we can do. You remember this little armored crank thing we have here? Well, if we slow down the game, you can see these are rotating at the same rotation, like the same direction. So instead of these large crankshaft, we can instead go into the large gearbox and select a large wheel. We remove this, put in a large wheel. We remove this, put in a large wheel. And then we connect these two. Now, you see, these are connected, which means if somebody blows up this engine so it doesn't work anymore, this propeller still spins with a lower speed and stuff, of course, but it still spins. So it's a huge added redundancy, and it's even fine for you to place blocks in between here. It will still work. We are going to armor these so that we have a wall in between of these. That's very smart, because then we have if one engine gets blown up, the other one doesn't automatically go with it. We have much added redundancy doing like this. When armoring these, keep in mind that this specific block, you can't put armor here because then you block the output. So leave this free. And that's actually all I have to tell you about ship propulsion for now. Big thanks to all of the supporters you see on the screen, especially, of course, Commander Ali, who built this beautiful hull we are using. Do suggest in the comment field what you want to see next in this little series. And with that, I will just say big thanks for watching. Please do like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. I see you next time. This is your host Eric of GMODISM, and please check out the GMODISM channel too. There's extra From the Depths content there. Anyways, have a good day. Bye!